If you're preparing a long report and it has 10% hallucination and you don't know where it is, that doesn't help you much.
What is sort of like Gyan's model?
Gyan is not trained on data. It cannot learn from data.
What motivated Gyan's approach?
Our tagline actually was from search to knowledge. And we said we're going to solve that problem because there's a huge yawning gap between...
What about sustainability?
Let's say consumption of energy happens at training time and at runtime. At training time now, our consumption is about 1 by 200th of the...
Do you envision, from a broader AI perspective, the adoption changing as trust becomes a design feature?
You can't retrofit trust, right? You can't duct tape trust afterwards. Because I have to know that it's good from...
Hey there, and welcome to Healthcare Journeys, where we bring you stories from across the healthcare landscape, chronicling personal and professional journeys that shape the industry. My name is Kevin Rosenquist. Thanks for listening.
This podcast is brought to you by S2M Health, a trusted partner for U.S. healthcare payers and providers. From accurate risk adjustment coding to full spectrum RCM services, S2M Health combines clinical expertise with precision operations to drive better outcomes across the healthcare ecosystem.
In healthcare AI, where lives, data privacy, and compliance intersect, hallucinations and opaque logic aren't just flaws, they can be catastrophic. Today's guest, Joy Dasgupta, CEO of Gyan, leads the charge in building AI you can trust, hallucination-free, explainable, and energy efficient. I'm excited about today's conversation. Joy, welcome. Happy to have you on the show.
Happy to be here, Kevin.
So for those who aren't super up on AI, not everybody knows this terminology. What is meant by the term hallucinations?
Okay, so hallucination is basically, we have sort of anthropomorphized it and taken it from our lexicon and put it into this silicon-based being. It is essentially when the expected output doesn't quite align with what you were expecting, that it seems to have veered off in some other direction. But why does it matter in healthcare, right? If I can take it there.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So if I want, let's just anchor this conversation, maybe you already have, that our focus here is on high-risk use cases where explainability is important, where the cost of a mistake is high. If use cases don't fit that definition, then there are many options in terms of the level of trust you need and what kind of AI you can use, right? I think we are aligned on that, right?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So just talking about hallucinations more broadly, as opposed to giving a very sharp definition. So this perceived infallibility of AI systems that we all seem to have developed, when there are falsehoods that are disguised as plausible, they're leading to a new term, I think, that is sort of floating around that I've heard, called automation bias. You don't want to double check that. You just take it on faith. Okay. Then that's sort of one thing that's in the backdrop. Now, broad examples of hallucination would be if you have a long report with false citations. There are many examples of this in the real world. You might have encountered some yourself. There are studies that are coming out from various different quarters in various different sectors about, how hallucination is actually reducing in many of the LLMs. However, if you're preparing a long report and it has 10% hallucination or 5% hallucination, and you don't know where it is, that doesn't help you much. You're probably better off writing that report from scratch. So there is another sort of, nuance to that. And finally, there are cases where there's zero tolerance of hallucination. So if you're sending something final off to the FDA, you're not playing with percentages at that point. You got to be dead sure, right? So there are some examples that might, help make it come alive for your audience here. Just the other day, a couple of months ago, the HHS released an AI called ELSA. Okay, it was supposed to be an assistant at the FDA. So this is like 2 months ago, and these things, of course, improve all the time. So hallucination reports from 2 years ago are no longer valid, but this is 2 months old. And FDA employees reported that it was hallucinating all kinds of things, including summaries, including citations. But then when the Washington Post went to the HHS to sort of get more validation of the report, they denied the claims.
Of course.
So the only conclusion there is maybe the employees were hallucinating, but we kind of doubt that.
Now, doubt that too.
So that's more at the institutional level. However, healthcare is something that, I don't know, of all the sectors in the world, if you take into account family members, caregivers, millions of workers involved, patients, providers, it touches every human being.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's important. And if you're using another example, if you're using LLMs, generative AI, that's going to be one class of, well, the only class actually that we'll be talking about other than Gyan. Mental health. Okay, so these are people who are probably already struggling to some extent. Okay,
Right.
and there you do not want to introduce any level of hallucination. Again, the Guardian, for example, has reported recently that that several users have developed acute delusional or psychotic symptoms. Okay, now increasingly relying on biased and fabricated responses. So that just reinforces the negativity.
And there was a story about someone committing suicide recently.
That's the one I was just.
After talking with ChatGPT at length. Yeah.
Exactly, that's the one. So that's the example I had. Exactly, and it ended in somebody's life being taken. And I don't know whether it was in response to that or just in general. I've also read that the Illinois has passed a legislation banning the use of AI for unlicensed therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we need to see more of that.
Yeah.
Before we are sure of what we're dealing with here, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
These are the bad news stories, but there are also places where hallucination maybe doesn't matter; it's just a nuisance. I have seen experts in healthcare and pharma really use AI smartly as an assistant. Limited tasks, short tasks, which they can quickly validate because they just know their stuff. Okay, if you don't know your stuff, and if you're getting a long report, and you're in trouble. And then there's another scenario, Kevin, where I think it might actually be beneficial, where you might want to turn up the hallucination, where you're looking for something new, right? You're experimenting with drug discovery. Now, that very, very early stages of drug discovery, step 0, okay? Maybe you can let it fly a little bit. You're in material science, you're looking for new material, looking for new planets. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you just know that that's a possibility. So then you just take that information and you have to do a little more digging on your own.
Correct.
Yeah, I got you.
So I don't know. That's a long-winded sort of hallucination is all those things.
Yeah. Well, it's a term that we don't, it's fairly new, at least in this context for people. And I think sometimes people get confused because it is a lot of times just straight up factual errors, but we call them hallucinations. So some people can get a little confused about that. But another thing with healthcare in particular is that data privacy. What is sort of like Gyan's model architecture? How does it uniquely preserve data privacy compared to maybe a cloud-based LLM?
Okay, and we might have to go a little bit into Gyan's architecture a little bit. Maybe you'll have further questions down the road, but let me just tell you about privacy. So there are 3 or 4 questions that we have to answer and implement. One is, are you going to learn from my data? Okay. Answer to that is no, because as we get into Gyan's architecture, Gyan is not trained on data. It cannot learn from data. So that's a bulletproof sort of situation there. Second, all data will always sit behind the client's firewall. Okay, our language model, plus their knowledge stores or their data stores, and of course anything that they access from the web, that they will do from inside their environment. So whether they implement it on their data center or on a private cloud, that's entirely up to them. So basically the onus for everything is on the client, and they can follow their same information security practices that they're doing for all other systems. Nothing special needs to be done for Gyan. Okay. So it stays inside. You apply your own policies, you run the show, we won't learn from your data. And lastly, and this is it's an interesting point, is when there's a new version of an LLM and it has to be redeployed inside, there's a lot of retraining involved at various levels. And And also, as you might have heard with GPT-5, that there was actually a rollback. It couldn't answer some of the questions that it could answer in GPT 4.5. Okay, now that's not necessarily a privacy issue, but it is a definitely a release management issue. So here, what we do is we hand over our software to the IT of our customer, and they deploy it. So we're completely hands off, and they are responsible for their own security. So, so it's sort of, to the extent that they have leaks, those leaks will percolate here. To the extent that they are bulletproof, this also will be bulletproof.
That's good for both of you. That helps you too. It helps make sure that you don't have to worry about those kind of things, and they don't have to worry about you using their data for any nefarious reasons.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what motivated Gyan's approach? How does it sort of redefine what we expect from enterprise AI in highly regulated fields?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's what we should get into here, Kevin. So I have to take you back a little bit, not too far back, 2018. No LLM.
Feels like a lifetime ago now, though, doesn't it?
I know. Feels like that. No LLMs, but the beginnings of various transformer-based architectures were there, like BERT, if you recall. There was also autocomplete of emails by Gmail, if you remember, which was actually quite a fun feature at that time. Those were the early signs of what was to come. And when we founded the company, our goal was, basically, we felt that there was a huge gap between search and knowledge. Okay, let me parse that for you a little bit. So we had all these fancy search engines dominating the IT market at the time. And when you use Google, you get a list of 100 results, and then you have to parse through that, and you have to figure out what the synthesis of that is. A lot of hard work. Okay, so our tagline actually was from search to knowledge. And we said we're going to solve that problem because there's a huge yawning gap between search results and the synthesized answer that you want from it. Okay, so that was where we started, and we used a different approach, which I will get into in a second. But then LLMs arrived in 2022, and they skipped the search step. Okay, very important for various reasons. That's the root cause of many things. They went directly to knowledge. So it's like a calculator. You type something, you don't know how it works, and you get the answer, you take it on faith. And if you want that explained, then you try to retrofit that explanation. Okay, that is not a good recipe for building trust.
Right.
So anyhow, in a major leap of faith, we all went there. Everybody's using LLMs broadly and widely. Now, Gen AI, LLMs, and AI are generally synonymous, right, in the world today. And they're all cut from the exact same cloth. GPT, generative. So, these LLMs, they generate content. Once you generate, you're already on a slippery slope because you can't trace it back to source because you've created something new. They're pre-trained. I'll get into that a little bit. Pre-trained on data, which is good for performance and could be bad for other things. And then transformer-based, T for transformer, which is essentially a black box, magical black box. It does all kinds of impossible things, but it's still a black box. Okay, so those GPT term, of course, OpenAI has appropriated the brand, but the same thing describes them all. They are approaching each other in features and capability. It's hard to differentiate. In fact, now if you're using some other application, they'll give you a choice of models. Which model would you want to use, right? In a dropdown.
Yeah, I use ChatGPT, and I can choose which model I want to use. Yeah.
There you go. So, and they also have the exact same shortcomings. So Gyan, turns out, has, addresses head on exactly those things that are shortcomings. Okay, and the root cause for that is the pre-trained part, P of the GPT, is essentially all these models are trained on whatever data they can lay their hands on. Internet is now exhausted, so we are now generating synthetic data. In other words, it's eating its own data to train itself. We'll see how that works in the long term. So the DNA of these language models is data. Okay, they're trained on data. It's born of data. The parents are data. So while these are magical children, it also amplifies some of the parents' shortcomings. So in Gyan, we took a different path. One thing we said, we are going to build our model on computational linguistics and semantics, and we're going to take some other fields from the academia and construct a AI, computational AI model out of that, which we did. And it will not be trained on data at all. Okay. So the minute you say that, a few things follow. Hallucination is not possible. It only comes from data. There is no bias in the training data. That also, I think, is quite important in healthcare, right? Because if you're bringing in an LLM that's preloaded for a certain gender or a certain race or certain whatever, it's problematic, right? Yep. I don't know how important this is, but Gyan was not trained on everybody else's IP. That seems to be not an issue that much anymore.
I don't know. Do people care? It's true. It's been like that. Yeah. People don't seem to care. They just accept on the phone, right?
Horses have left the stable. It preserves enterprise data privacy, which we just talked about. It also has repeatability of results. Okay, this is it's a major point, but not often talked about. Same query, same results every time. Okay, in GPT, which you use, if you type the same query twice at a 5-second interval, you'll get different. Generally the same thing, but there'll be different words.
Can be very different. Yeah, I mean, even the approach. Even sometimes if you go back and say, if you make some changes to whatever it said and said, okay, go back and add this in, and then give me a final summary or something like that, it'll be different. Like they'll actually like change things in it sometimes. So yeah, you're right. You're 100% right.
Right. So so the onus is basically, you're on you. So all these things put together, it all stems from the fact that we are not trained on data. And the fact that we use linguistics gives us the double clickability. So I can double click on any analysis that Gyan gives. I can go to the source article and I can go to the line in the source article, very important for healthcare, pharma, etc., that is completely traceable, auditable, explainable, pick your word. And one last thing is you also have full agency over the content. So you will choose, the corporation, the enterprise, or the individual, you will choose where to point Gyan. Okay, so Gyan doesn't come with any pre-trained data. It's a blank slate. You will point it and your answer will come from there. Now, if you don't care, okay, and you say, okay, I really want the answer to this question and I don't care where it comes from, that's not what we're talking about here. Okay, in these use cases, you very much care. You want to double click. You want to find that citation in that specific piece of research. So the sum of all these things makes Gyan very different, and it head-on addresses all those things that are issues with LLMs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's so interesting because you're taking away the ability for it to hallucinate by doing that. Yeah.
Right. And I can't learn from, so this answer about, will you learn from my data? We can't.
Yeah.
We would like to, but we can't.
Yeah. So that way it's not about, it's really just accessing the data that the company that is using Gyan has. Correct. And nothing else.
Nothing else. Yeah. And if there's bias in that data, sure, that bias will be reflected. But there's no bias in the training data.
Right.
And that's, when we talk about bias in LLMs, that's what we are talking about. That it comes pre-biased.
What about sustainability? Because I think one of the things that a lot of people are concerned about with AI is we're seeing all these, stats about data centers, how much energy they're using. You guys use quite a bit less energy than traditional models. Is this sort of why? Because it's not learned. It's the training data is not. You didn't use the same parameters that a lot of other people did. Is that why?
Yes, and also there's, let's say, consumption of energy happens at training time and at runtime, inference time.
Yeah.
Okay, at training time now, our consumption is about, last time we did the math, and it's about 1/200th of the energy required to train an average sized LLM.
Wow.
So it's a fraction of a fraction. And that's because we run on CPUs. We don't need NVIDIA chips. We don't need GPUs. At the same performance. Okay, so performance is still, like seconds or sub-second, depending on the nature of your query. Except if you're going to the web, which is like a deep research, then of course it's fetching and discovering articles live. Then it takes a little longer.
Sure.
So it's a fraction of the energy, and then And also, by the way, these data centers that are wherever they're being built all over the world. In the US, they're picking spots. And I was actually quite, I noticed the other day that several of the spots that were identified also had tremendous water scarcity already. Okay, so it's some kind of a multi-dimensional, problem that I guess somebody has to solve. But in a practical sense, I think this will only matter to from a if I when I'm selling Gyan, to potential prospects and customers. It there are two questions I get. One is, okay, is Gyan going to cost less as a result? And the answer is generally yes. Okay, and the second is not a question, but it's like, do they have net zero ambitions? Are they sustainability aware? Uh, if they are, then this will accelerate their net zero plans, not send it in the other direction. Like Google, for example, they rewrote all their net zero commitments and set it out by another 5 or 10 years, because it can't be achieved.
Right. Yeah. With all the AI efforts, yeah, they can't.
Yeah. So, I think it comes down to, as far as our customers are concerned, does it matter to them? It
Was
matters
that
to us.
That's what I was going to ask. Was this a mission? Was this part of like something that you wanted, that this was really important to
Yes.
to Gyan?
Yes, it's very important for Gyan. It is also personally very important for me because I'm a closet climate activist, but that's not part of this discussion. So yes, very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although AI has the potential to solve so many climate and ecosphere problems, but in the process of getting there, we shouldn't, I don't know, put ourselves in a very tricky position.
Right. Yeah. Now, as far as I feel like you got a lot more trust because of what you're doing, obviously, because you're not collecting any data, you're not training on their data. Do you envision that from a broader AI perspective, the adoption changing as trust becomes a design feature rather than an afterthought? Because that's something that a lot of people are very concerned about. If we can get more people to, or if we can make people feel safer, you've got to imagine that AI adoption is going to get broader and less scary for a lot of people.
I got to agree with you on that. I mean, yes, I think so, because now the resistance is the lack of trust, right? So if you remove that away, I mean, there'll be a period of, well, really, did you really do it? And a little bit of testing, and then maybe very rapid adoption. But the issue here, I think, is, we defaulted into a one-size-fits-all mentality, which we often do. And of course, there's this, this mad rush for, AI supremacy at an international level. So we took what worked, or what it seems to be working, and tried to force fit into the enterprise. And I think, I don't know, I mean, at least from our perspective, I think there are different rules of operations inside the enterprise. Okay, fear of missing out can't be your primary driver, right?
Yeah, or getting left behind, or not being current, or not sounding like you are, technologically driven. Yeah,
right. So we tried to force fit this thing, or we are still trying to force fit something that maybe is not built for purpose. High value use cases again. Okay, I mean, we anchored that at the start of our discussion. And we are trying to, as you've already said, we are trying to then afterwards guardrail it, retrofit it, use RAG, patch it up. You can't retrofit trust, right? You can't duct tape trust afterwards. I have to know that it has got good bones, right, from the beginning to end. So without that trust, absolutely, there'll be no real adoption. But trust is more than, just hallucination free, right, Kevin? I think it's more than that. And we've been talking mostly about hallucination, but it includes things like transparency, right? So do I know where the content is coming from? So I just talked about how in Gyan you have full agency over your content. Is the analysis traceable to source every time? Not generally pointing to some documents, but specific lines. Is it explainable? Is the reasoning visible to me? Can I audit this thing like I would audit my finances? And the other thing that often we haven't started discussing yet in the enterprise context is who's accountable if there's a failure.
Yeah.
I mean, the examples that people talk about is, okay, there's a Tesla car crash. Who goes to jail, or who goes to court? is unclear. So all of these things I think have to come together to really to create that trust. But instead of chasing AGI, right? If I were to invent an acronym, if you were chasing ATI instead, right? Artificial but trusted intelligence.
I like that.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I agree. And you're totally right about the arms race too. It became such a battle for all these big companies. I mean, you're taking a very specific approach by going after healthcare and other highly regulated industries. I'd imagine finance is something that probably you guys would come in on as well. Cybersecurity maybe too. Do you see that becoming more of a thing where more AI companies are going to really kind of get granular with the industries that they want to go in, because then you have more ability to control the hallucinations and any other trust issues?
Yeah, maybe, Kevin, but I'd say that, okay, this will be maybe an extreme statement, but unless there is a change in the black box transformer architecture, you will constantly be retrofitting trust. And you can't retrofit trust because it's not there in the beginning. It's like one big giant black box. Now, we have lived with black boxes before, right? And we've done it well. I mean, I know you do some finance coverage as well, right? Fintech and finance industry.
Fintech, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, algorithmic trading has been around for a long, long time, and we are okay with that.
Right.
It doesn't hallucinate, and we have set a risk analysis for that, and we have controls, and we have circuit breakers and kill switches, and that thing doesn't hallucinate. So we are okay with black box, I think, because we've tested it in the hardest of industries. But we are not okay with hallucination and post facto trying to say, you know what, this is a black box, but I'm going to do these things to make it a open box. Doesn't work like that. So unless, in our view, we switch to a different architecture that is transparent by definition, then for these high value use cases, I don't know, I would argue it's better to do nothing. Just do what you were always doing.
Just stick with the status quo, kind of.
Yeah, and that worked. That was working. Maybe not that efficient, whatever. That's better than jumping off the cliff into something you don't understand.
Right. Yeah, and then just hoping it works.
Yeah. Prayer is going to be a very essential element of that whole thing.
Yeah, totally. So looking ahead, I mean, do you see more adoption in healthcare specifically? Obviously, we see headlines about AI helping with disease diagnoses and all this amazingly cool stuff, and that's great. But in a more back end situation, like we talk about, data in healthcare can often be chaotic, all over the place, not managed well. Do you see AI as a really viable use case to really kind of organizing the healthcare system to help fix some of the shortcomings?
Again, I'm not a futurist, but I'd say that, I mean, this if we get some of these architectural elements right, which by the way will require some of the big players to go to the drawing board for these use cases. I keep saying that this may be 10% of the use cases in the world. Okay, other 90% can run on LLMs as they stand today. For that 10%, it's not happening on LLMs. You have to re-architect from the beginning. And when you do that, democratization of healthcare, solving data, I mean, the potential is endless, right? It is massive. And in AI sort of timeline, I don't know, that's not 50 years away, right? That's like, I don't know, you put a time on it, no more than 10 years away, right?
Yeah.
Even that feels long. But yeah, for sure, Kevin, I think lots of good things will happen, but not force fitting the wrong architecture on the wrong use case.
Yeah. How do we prevent people from doing that?
I think they just won't, because here's the thing. I mean, this is a lived experience, right? So we read everything that you read, and the magic that AI is doing, and correctly so. But then adoption. So people are reaching out to us. Our favorite prospect is somebody who has already kind of been around the block a few times.
Yeah,
they're done that and not succeeded with LLMs, because otherwise it's a long sales cycle. Now we are seeing more and more of those folks. So we are working with a regulatory body. We are working with the largest life sciences research company, if not the largest, top five, let's say. We are working with one of the top tech institutions in the United States to use Gyan to check other models, right? Which is an interesting use case.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's it's happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you very much, Joy. Joy Dasgupta, CEO of Gyan. Really appreciate you being here. Loved hearing all about the future of what you guys are doing, and yeah, I'd love to have you on again down the road to see where you're at. Probably won't be long before things are going different directions, right?
Hey, Kevin, lovely talking to you. Look forward to whenever we talk next.
All right. Great. Thanks, Joy.